Now we're recording. Mo, you have the floor. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Nia. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. The Federation has really enjoyed being a part of these meetings over the last couple of months. And thank you all for that really rich share. That was really nice. And now I want to know all of your love languages. I really am always interested in how people like understand and receive love. So all right, so thanks everybody just for like taking time. I know it's a lot being on the Zoom calls, so I really appreciate everybody just showing up and wanting to learn about particularly about co-ops, but today in specific learning about community engagement, movement work, mutual aid, and local community politics. And there's a lot of different buckets there. And so maybe I'll just start by saying, I'm also an improviser in my fun life, or I was before COVID became a thing, and I'm no longer able to be in person with people. But I do improv comedy, and really what that means is I really enjoy conversation. I enjoy talking on the fly with people and like changing directions if we need to. So there's going to be a little bit of interactivity here. So if you have, actually, you know what? I'm going to drop a link right now for the presentation that you're seeing on your screen. And what's going to happen is a little bit later, I'm going to invite you all to add into the presentation. So you should be able to access that link. Hopefully that works. And but if someone could actually like take a look at that and let me know if for some reason you can't access that link, that'll be really helpful. Or at least you have it beforehand. So as Nia said, my name is Mo Manklang. I am the policy director at the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops. I used to be the communications director, and I just recently shifted over. I'll change the slide. I won't talk too much about the Federation, but just so if you're not familiar, we focus in on worker-owned and governed businesses. It's a way of creating jobs and building wealth, and particularly for communities that have been locked out of wealth building and of job opportunities. And it's a solution that I feel really strongly that our country really needs, our world really needs, because it's just so important. Like doing business is awesome, and it is really important that businesses center the voice of the workers and take care of the workers, especially at a time like this, right? So we're seeing a lot of workers being laid off and not having any opportunity to chime in on like how their company works in this crisis. And we spend all of our time working to make sure that the people do get to have that voice and trying to spread that word. So there's just a little bit of where I'm coming from in this conversation. And this is the point where I'm going to ask people to chime in. So the prompt that I have here is, what does community organizing look like to you? And this will just kind of help me get an understanding of like where y'all are coming from, and what we can and should talk about today. So if you can access that link, you can just go ahead and type in here. And maybe what I'll do is share a different screen. Maybe I'll share this so that we can actually see people typing in here. But if you want, you can also just unmute yourself and just talk at me, and I can type it in if you're unable to get into the presentation. So what do I mean by what does community organizing look like to you? It's like when you are working with like whatever community you work with. So whether it's like within Ujima, I think Nia just laid out a couple good ways that y'all connect, or through your church, or through I don't know, like a worker center or anything like that. I'm curious, like, how do you communicate with each other right now? Is it through meetings? Is it through emails? Do you call each other? Do you do some socially distant get-togethers? Like, what do you do? Well, Slack. Is there an Ujima Slack? I want to get on that. Okay, gotcha. So we're seeing Slack, we're seeing Zoom meetings. I know a lot of folks here in Philly have been like protesting together a lot. Oh, I love this. Facebook community gardening groups. I've seen a lot of Facebook gardening groups and plant groups lately, which is like pretty fun. Oh, door-to-door knocking. I like that. Lars, would you be willing to share a little bit about the door-to-door knocking? What does that look like right now? Or does it look like that right now? Are you able
Sure.
to?
Sorry about that. It takes me a while to find all the buttons here. So certainly right now, I can't say that I've done a lot of door-to-door knocking. I've found it to be very effective with some groups. You know, the only group that I've seen out right now is the census. And I think that they are being very targeted in a way that some, so there's two types, I guess, of organizing. You know, you're going to an address and you know something about that person, and you're trying to engage them directly, re-up their membership, come to a meeting, whatever it is. Or you're kind of doing the shotgun and you're just going out and hitting everybody with a message. It seems to me that right now there's that little bit of negotiation, you know, hey, are you comfortable talking right now? Making sure you're wearing a mask and doing all of that kind of stuff. But I think for the kind of work that we're going to be doing with Artisans Asylum, as we prepare for a move from one community into another, we're going to want to be doing a lot of just that direct neighborhood outreach. So that's what's been on my mind.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Siona, can you talk a little bit about your street's neighborhood text message chain? One thing that I'm always interested in is like, how do people get on the chain? Is it literally just like you all know each other really well? Like, how do you like add people to it? Who maintains it? That kind of stuff.
Hi, so it's not exactly a tight-knit formal community, and we did try to start a Google group, I think, and kind of pick up the formality. We just haven't had a lot of chance to maintain it. So yeah, it's just more text messages among the more friendlier or more outgoing families on the street. It's a pretty well-established, like multi-generational house, or you know, multi-families own on the same block kind of neighborhood. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I love that.
I know. Yeah.
One thing that we recently have started here in Philly is that we have a group called the Alliance for a Just Philadelphia that I'll share a little bit more about them later, but we started a Signal thread, and it's just anybody who, what was that, Louise?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
No, my computer is just giving me headaches.
Oh, okay. Got it. So if you don't know, Signal is, it's basically like a text messenger, but it is a little bit more secure, and it's a lot of like organizers use it to keep things kind of like away from like Facebook if they need to, or really just to keep it like a little bit more encrypted. What we have noticed, so we started the Signal thread and we just add people to it as they ask to be added to it, and it's really fun. We've done a lot of talking to each other all the way up to like 1 a.m. when we had a city hearing and people were all like watching live, and until all hours of the night, like seeing how it turned out. So it's been a really interesting, like, and fun organizing tool and a way for us to build relationship. So always interested in that. Cool. I'm not actually sure how much all of you know really well. So it's really nice to hear kind of like how you're talking to each other. Yeah, definitely like one-on-ones, building relationship. That's so important. I think that's really like has to be the basis of any kind of organizing. Right now I've also found just like getting on the phone with people is really nice if you're kind of like Zoom tired. Cool. So thanks. That was really helpful just to kind of like get an idea of where you all are at. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Federation organizes, and I hope that is like helpful for you all to think about how you're organizing together. I encourage all of you to ask questions and interrupt me because I really do not like talking at people, but I love talking with people. So please feel free to stop me and ask questions. And let me make sure that I know. Nia, I'm supposed to go till 7:15, right? Because that's when you said we're switching.
Yeah, but we're not doing a member team meeting tonight. So, you can just kind of finish when you need to finish, I think.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Cool. So then we'll go to where we go. So, all right, so let's jump in. So the Federation, like I said, we're a nationwide network of worker-owned businesses, but a lot of that work, as a national organization, it's really difficult to keep up with what's going in any different area, except for Philadelphia, which is where most of our staff is. So we work really closely with our local partners. Some of them that I'm sure a lot of you know. So like Cooperation Jackson, the Cincinnati Union Co-op Initiative, the LA Co-op Lab. These are all just the ways that our national organization makes sure that we stay tied to what's going on the ground. So there's almost no way for me as, like head of communications or policy director to know what's going on with any, really deeply knowing what's going on in any particular area except for Philly. That requires work, right? It requires trust. It requires a lot of relationship building. So the way that we think about it is, there's kind of like lateral tiers, right? So there's different ways of connecting. And we try to create all the spaces that we can to do that. So we have spaces for these local partners to talk to each other. We have, I guess I could switch over to the slightly nicer looking presentation slides. So we have member councils and peer networks. So our member councils are kind of like more or less like officially organized groups within our membership that focus in on specific things like policy and advocacy or racial and economic justice. The Union Co-ops Council focuses on relationships with labor unions. And then we have peer networks. Usually those are based around like industry. It sounds like, I know that you all connect in like little groups a lot around specific topic areas. So, like we have a lot of that going on in order to like just help people know where to go, right? Usually they're led by our members, and it's a really great way to help people that are in different areas. And I mean, especially nationally, but even in an area like Boston, like there's, obviously different neighborhoods and like people aren't always able to like get together, but, getting them on a phone call once a quarter is actually really helpful to help people like share best practices and things like that. Let me see. Yeah, Louise, I really agree. Like, tabling is something that I have always found to be really important and one of the best ways to get to know a lot of people really quickly. It is hard. It's especially now, it's hard to figure out ways to get to know people. But I'm finding like the more and more kind of teaching spaces that we have, which is kind of the equivalent of tabling, is like we've seen a lot of teach-ins happening. So like if you care about the budget, come to this teach-in, and then you kind of get to know people through those avenues. So these are our member councils and peer networks. This is how we organize. And here's kind of like a little bit of visualization. This is actually more than just policy organizing, but hopefully this helps. So we have, oh, I didn't have a chance to get the Ujima logo in there, but the way that it works, so like the USFWC is like in this kind of like tan circle is, we're a national organization. And then even like above and around us are other national partners, like the National Cooperative Business Association that covers all co-ops, not just the worker co-op ones, or the New Economy Coalition that is also national and works with all sorts of groups. I think that's where I actually first met Nia, might have been at a New Economy Coalition meeting.
Yep, Common Bound.
Yeah, wow. That feels not that long ago and also 10 million years ago.
Yep.
The U.S. Solidarity Economy Network is a national partner. The Climate Justice Alliance. These are the kinds of groups that we as a national organization stay in touch with our like larger partners, and then we're able to like take that information and then share it out to our members that are on the ground, and then they share it with their members. So like in this is why one of the reasons why it's really nice to be in community with y'all, because we consider Ujima one of our movement allies, and especially because y'all are cooperatively run. And then so like I can come to spaces like this and share like this is how like we're soliciting information from you all about like what you're doing. This is how this is what's going on with the New Economy Coalition or Climate Justice Alliance or any of those. We're able to like share back information, and that's why you see all these like back and forth arrows, because as a cooperative organization, we don't really think of it as like we are this like big umbrella, like we're this big like hierarchical system. We think of it more like this, we're in charge of exchanging the information, right? We're in charge of making sure that there's a way for people to share their priorities, their best practices, their strategies, the same way that Ujima does in Boston. And just to give you a little bit of like what that looks like really is, for the Federation, like the ways that we've organized together is around endorsements. We joined the call for stopping utility shutoffs. We helped inform the Movement for Black Lives platform. We work with the Solidarity Economy Network to put on webinars. We do endorsements. Right now, we're actually working on a position paper, which is basically like, how do we feel about these issues? So we know how we feel about worker co-ops, right? We're pro worker co-op, but like, how do we feel about what do we think is the best strategy for housing? What do we think is the best strategy for addressing climate change? Like, who are our allies, and really naming those. And so we're working on this as a way for not just for us to like literally just take the time to write out what is it that we care about. We obviously care about economic justice, but that plays out in a lot of different kinds of ways. So putting down in paper what we care about and why we care about it, and including all of the members in being able to inform that is really important. So I really admired how Ujima put together the fund, and like the long process that it took to kind of like figure out like who's in charge of it, who gets to do the decision making, like pulling community members in is really important. And even things as little as what Nia had brought up earlier, which I think is awesome, is doing the staff wire and helping people to understand, like break down the walls between people that are paid to do the work and people that are paid to do different work, but it intersects in a lot of ways. So those things are really, really important. Yeah, and so there's and to get really, really specific, COVID has been a really important time in us understanding like what our role is within this country, within our communities, and it's one thing that we've seen is like because cooperatives are structured in a way that like really makes sure that we're always going back to like, what do our members think? What do the workers think? What do, like, even in a consumer co-op, like what do the consumers think? we're uniquely positioned to be able to work really quickly, to organize really quickly, because we're already used to doing the decision making thing, right? We're already used to saying like, hey, like, what do you think about this issue? Here's a place where you're invited to like give your input. So these are a couple examples are Red Emma's. Some of you might know them. They are in Baltimore. They're a bookstore and a cafe. So there are, let me see, it's actually 6 local businesses, but they came together, 6 local businesses. They already had a web store, and they actually just said like, hey, you know, this is a time where distribution it looks different, right? People aren't going into stores right now. So they pulled together a bunch of local businesses and they shared distribution and delivery now. They call it the general store. And that came together really quickly because they're already used to figuring out and innovating and pivoting really quickly. A New Day Co-op distribution started in May, and that was actually kind of like a brainchild of one of our members. I think it's Patty Pan. You have to forgive me. It might be Patty Cake. I always get them a little bit mixed up because we have 2 bakeries that have very similar names. But they're both, I love them both, but for some reason my brain, I can't remember, but I think it's Patty Pan. So they started this thing called New Day Cooperative Distribution, and they came together with not just co-ops, but a lot of other like producers. There's a florist in there. There's like local farms in there. And they came together to also do distribution together. So you can look at, I think it's rethinkinggroceries.coop. And that came together really, really quickly. And I just think it's like a really important thing to do. And this time is to figure out, like, it's not just, we don't want to just get back to where we were, right? Because where we were as an economy sucks a lot. It sucked. It doesn't really work. And so what we want to do is rebuild our economy, rebuild our distribution systems. You know, like all these things have broken down. So rather than building them back up, what do we want to build instead? So like having these like cooperative distribution channels is really, really important. This is a moment where we have to meet the need. And I think like throughout history, cooperatives have always been a way that people organize to change systems. You know, they've organized around like rural electricity, and right now they're organizing around rural broadband because having the internet is so important right now. And so you'll see like time after time after time, cooperatives have been a really strong solution for dealing with challenges. In the top right, you'll see, this is actually just a screenshot from the Mutual Aid Hub. And it one of the things that we made sure to do was not just connect people with co-op resources, but with like whatever's on the ground. So for instance, in Philadelphia, we just had a Philly Mutual Aid Network, and it was just a spreadsheet, right? It was a spreadsheet that everybody had access to. There were people that stepped up to be able to like point people in the right direction. So like I like have a washing machine, and I just said like, hey, if anybody needs to like wash their laundry, you can come here and do it. You can come pick it up, and being able to connect people in the ways that we're able to like share food, share resources. Those things are so important. Let me see. So if you haven't checked out the Mutual Aid Hub, you definitely should. You can just Google it, and I'm sure that there's stuff going on in Boston. Again, feel free to interrupt me. I love all the comments, and I have it up, so I'm definitely looking at them. But if you have any questions, you can also feel free to just like unmute and chime in. So now I'll just share a couple more specific things. Louise, can you say a little bit more about this? I'm not exactly sure what you mean here.
I went to a fair trade thing once, and I didn't realize that Cabot Cheese is a co-op.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and it's lasted so long.
Yeah.
I want they were considering going public, but they were afraid the quality will go down.
Yeah. So let me see. Okay, so I went on a really amazing tour. I wish I had the pictures here. I went on an amazing tour of the Cabot factory a couple years ago, and it's really amazing. So I think it's like 200 farms in the New England area. They take in 2 million gallons of milk every day, and they turn that into something like 200,000 pounds of product. And it's all done cooperatively, and it's pretty amazing. It has lasted for a really long time. And Cabot's also supported many other co-ops along the way. If you ever want cheese, and maybe this is for Nia or anyone else that like, if you ever want cheese for any of your events, Cabot is very, very generous about sending cheese to events. Whenever, because they have a whole program that's just geared towards helping hooking up volunteers with free cheese. Yeah, Siona, you know what? I'm like, a fun aside is that, so I had ordered some for an event here in Philadelphia, and then there was a mix-up of dates, and it ended up coming a day after the event instead of a day before the event, and so effectively I was just hosting my own event in my own kitchen for the next month or so, eating cheese. Also, a fun fact is that Cabot cheese is lactose free. So if any of you are lactose intolerant, this is my PSA for all of you, that it is a very good way. Yes. Yeah, that is exactly the amount of excitement I have, Louise. It is really, really good and good for our lactose free folks. So just a little bit more about some other co-ops during COVID. This is also a moment where we have to assess, like, where are we strong, where are we not strong. South Mountain Company in Massachusetts. I forget where they are in relation to you all. I think maybe a little south and east, maybe. Back in 2008, when the last crash happened, they took an assessment, right? So like they got through it, they survived, and then they said like, hey, what are we doing here? Like what would we do if another crisis like this happened? And so they vowed to be better prepared next time, and they were. They have been paying everybody equally during this time, and they have not cut any money from people's salaries. They treat everybody as if they're working 40 hours, but they also are allowing, like they're making arrangements for people who aren't able to because they have to take care of family, or they need time for themselves. But they're able to make those decisions together, which I think is really, really important. Just a couple more things, new frameworks. They appointed like a general management to like figure out things and make decisions together. And we saw that so we've been doing some data collection during this time, and we found that 86% of worker co-ops had structures in place to like really quickly make decisions. So it's all about preparing. It's all about like knowing that, like this is a group that we care about. We want to make decisions together, and we're going to do the work to make that happen. Let's see. One of my favorites is the Carolina Textile District, which is in North Carolina. They are a cut and sew factory, so they like literally are they're making clothes, they're making blankets, they're working within like their little district to like create fabrics and things like that. And they put together a whole program particularly to hook up home care cooperatives and other businesses with personal protective equipment. So it's just ways that like they already were doing what they were doing. They already had the capability to put together equipment, and they saw a need with another co-op, so it was really quick. They didn't have to like wait for somebody to come to them. They already knew. It said like, hey, we can do this. Hey, other co-ops in our network, how can we help you? So creating those production lines is really important. And yeah, I mean, this is all stuff that I'm sure you're seeing in Boston is just like, cooperatives have been connected to their communities. They're like internally sharing like essential resources like food and money, but also like health and wellness resources, providing discounts for other co-ops, working with other mutual aid networks. So it's really helpful. This is something that, so I'm right now, I'm actually a part of a disaster justice learning circle, and which has been like really, really interesting. And one of the main tools that has come out of this is this thing called, has nothing to do, well, it sort of has something to do with co-ops, but it's actually just called a COOP. It's a continuity of operations plan, and it's basically like a spreadsheet that helps you as an organization, as a group of people, to figure out like who takes care of what when we're in emergency, when we know that we need to shift really quickly to supporting each other and organizing together. Who's doing what, who's in charge of the bank accounts, who's in charge of payroll, who's in charge of different programs, and it's really just like a really simple tool, but a really powerful one, right? So it's like, who do you go to when you have a question about like where are the notes from this meeting, or where do I go to if I need to apply for like for funding through like the Ujima fund, like things like that. So knowing where things are and who to go to is really important, because it really cuts down on needing to like ask too many questions that are getting repeated over and over and over again. So I'm actually going to, I have a link to that. So one thing that we're doing in this circle, which I found is really, really useful, is everybody's creating their own like COOP plan for their organizations. So I'm passing it along to you. So that's a link. You can make a copy of it. All the stuff that's in there is just, I think it was just like a test stuff that was filled in. So there's nothing in there that's like sensitive, even though you're seeing people's names in there. So you can poke around in there. Some things that are really cool is that like there's a tab for, let me see, there's a tab for like operations stuff, there's a tab for programs, there's like all like different sections for different areas. So like I would really encourage all of you to kind of like figure out together, like how do you make these decisions, how do you know where to go to, and you can modify it for whatever your need is, but I think it's a really helpful structure to be able to like move really quickly in a time of need. So so yeah, so that is actually like my last kind of like big thing that I wanted to focus on. I kind of wanted to make a little bit of time for all of us to just like do some like sharing together and questions. I can share a little bit more about the COOP if you want, or I can talk a little bit more about some of the strategies that we've had within the co-op movement. But this is, we don't have to use this. This is your time, and I'm really curious to hear like how y'all have been like organizing during COVID. And we're in this for the long haul, so how we imagine working together over the next, 6 months, at least a year, until we get back into things.
Hey Mo, this is Siona. Thanks so much for this. I guess I'm just curious what are some ways that you have found or either directly experienced or have learned to kind of keep up some of the momentum among this crisis time in organizing work? I don't know. Challenging for me personally to think about just getting up out of bed sometimes, and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's I think that's a really important question. So I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see your faces a little bit better. So what I have found is that this is a moment to really think about our people. We really have to focus on individual people right now, and building like really strong relationships with each other. So I think there's an instinct to go right to like, you know, some of the stuff that's even in the spreadsheet that I just shared with you, but the instinct is go straight there and stay there. Like, you know, how are we like operationalizing? How are we like getting food distributed? And all of those things are important. I'm definitely not saying that they aren't, but the things that helped us to kind of gel as a community were really like meetings like this, where we made spaces where it was just like, hey, here's a space for just like solidarity. It's just sharing, like, how are you feeling? How are you coping? Giving people space to just share, literally just share how they're feeling. And doing that in a safe space, right? Because it's kind of, you know, it can be hard to find a safe space for people. You know, so we had, I think like every month we had a solidarity meeting where it was just like getting people together and talking. I know I saw a lot of mutual aid groups had like, you know, not just like who needs food, but like who needs a phone call, right? Like who just like isn't able to see anybody right now because they're immunocompromised, but that doesn't mean that I don't still want to talk to people. So really focusing and building on like the one-on-one connections. Incredible.
Yeah. That's helpful. Like, yeah. It's just so easy when you're isolated. So
yeah.
I was hoping there was some like magic, like
magic.
Yeah, sprinkling dust of some sort.
You know what? Like, I think it's like I always go back to, you know, something that somebody said in church to me like a long time ago is that people connect to people, and there's just nothing around it. There's nothing around like just that one-on-one connection that is going to be anywhere near as good as like, you know, somebody could give me like groceries like every week, but if I feel like you're just giving it to me and I'm not able to like interact with you or connect with you in any way, it actually it's not quite as meaningful.
Yeah.
So
thank you. Unfortunately, I do have to go for another Ujima member meeting. So thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Hi, Fiona.
Bye.
One thing that we actually did on staff that I think was really helpful was that we made different spaces. So, you know, we work together on the daily, so we talk to each other all the time, but and sometimes it's like it was so frustrating in the beginning because we're like trying to do too many things. We're trying to care for each other and then also like get stuff done. So what we did was we created like different spaces. We have like on Mondays, we have a check-in time that's just like, here's what my week looks like so you know what you can and can't expect of me. Here's like happy hours that we have every couple of weeks so we can just like have a beverage together or eat together and just talk about completely not work related things. And then we have like a built-in like staff support time, which is just like how are we feeling, particularly how are we feeling as a staff, and like what are the things that we still need to work out, like we have too many meetings still, or people just need to have a 4-day week instead of a 5-day week, things like that. So being able to like have a space for each different conversation has been extremely helpful. Any other questions or things that people want to explore a little bit more? I know we're right about a time, but I'm happy to stay on and just gonna like chat. Well, thanks for coming for the last of the presentation. I will also drop a link to the presentation itself again, just so that people can have it. And like, if you want to share it around Nia, you're more than welcome to do so. Yeah, I'm always around, like, you know, the Federation is always interested in figuring out how to keep space. Like, we've definitely really admired Ujima's commitment to like making space for learning together. That has felt really, really important. And all these sessions have been like really nice for me to even just be honest to hear from other people. But I think it's easy to set down those kinds of things like learning, like like making space specific to learn when there's all this going on. But it is really important and helpful. So.
Cool. Thank you so much, Mo. This was fantastic. And so this was a great finale to the series. I know we are going to miss the Federation around here, but I also know this will not be the last for sure. But definitely we've been really enjoying the series. And so we're really happy. And actually, let me turn my camera on. We're happy that you all were available to essentially spend the summer with us. And I think that that's definitely some of the things you were saying were resonating. So one of our first, our first move during the pandemic was to say, let's check in with people, for example. And we thought about the cooperative work series because we said probably, we had been doing feasibility studies previously. We said probably people may have just so much on their mind. We want to think about some other things that people want to talk about and think about what type of space we are creating right now. And so this series on cooperative work seemed appropriate for the summer, and it's definitely been wonderful. So we've been hearing a lot of positive feedback about it. So thank you so much. And Jenny in the chat has said she's learned a lot.
Yeah.
So that wraps us up for the evening and for the series. But sorry, I cut you off, Mo. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say thank you. It's been a really, really nice summer because we've been sharing in staff like what we have been sharing in the meetings with each other. So that's been like a really good opportunity for us as well. And I just realized I didn't even mention we literally called every single member over the summer, and it's something that I'm like I wanted to make sure that I shared because as we were talking about like how important one-on-ones are, I was like, that is literally how we we sent out surveys and that's like fine, but like we also called everybody to help them go through those surveys because it took a lot of staff time, but it was like ultimately the best thing because like this time, like being able to see your faces or hear your voice, it's like way different than like, please check off these 5 boxes about how you're doing during a crisis. And so exactly. So I think this is like one of like having these like face-to-face check-ins has been so inspiring and really helpful for us as well. So thank you for inviting us into the space.
Thank you so much, Mo. All right, and so with that, I will stop the recording.